original Lilo and Stitch taught us that Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind. But the 2025 live-action remake taught us that if your Ohana manages to minorly inconvenience you in your big plans at all, f*** Ohana, move on, relinquish them to the state, it'll all end up better once the credits roll. Hey y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. As of the time of this video's recording, the live-action remake of the Disney classic Lilo and Stitch is currently wreaking havoc on the box office, breaking records, even putting Tom Cruise to shame. And of course, the internet is buzzing about this film for a number of reasons. Not just because of the box office records it has shattered, but because of a lot of the plot points that the movie happened to change. If you don't know, I grew up adoring Disney, which is why I talk about Disney so much on this channel. I was a Disney fanatic. I've pretty much seen most of the older Disney films hundreds of times. I could probably quote the entire original Lilo and Stitch to you by memory, which is why I was so dreading this one and why I made the effort to see it. And being that Lilo and Stitch actually has been one of my favorite Disney films of all time since I was a kid, I can tell you that this one is actually a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. It is so incredibly different, so soulless, such an ugly movie that it makes the live-action Beauty and the Beast film look good. And that film had more auto-tune than T-Pain has had in any of his albums from the early 2000s. This film kind of feels like an experience I had last week when I went to Arby's to pick up their chicken cordon bleu sandwich, which actually used to be one of my favorite sandwiches back in the day. I remember it being fresh and tasty and wonderful, and the bread was fluffy. And so last week I went to go get this sandwich because they brought it back. And yeah, it looked enough like the chicken cordon bleu sandwich I used to get back in the day, but it was stale, it was greasy, it was cold, it was almost flavorless, and it also lacked not only the pleasure that I used to derive from the Arby's chicken cordon bleu sandwich, but also any nutritional value, as immediately after consuming this sandwich, I felt gravely ill and like I would have been better off just staying hungry. And that's basically exactly how I felt after watching the live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. It looked like it was trying to be a thing that I loved, but every part of it was just so wrong and so terrible that I feel like had I never watched it, I probably would be a better person. For my rating, I give the live-action Lilo and Stitch a 3 out of 10, and I'm looking forward to really getting into the meat and potatoes of this one, so expect spoilers. I don't really think that I need to warn you about spoilers for this one, but just in case, there will be spoilers as we get into this review, but first, here's a word from this video's sponsor. All right, we're officially getting into the summer, the hottest months of the year. But you know what else is really hot right now? Online security. While you're taking advantage of summer weather and surfing the web unprotected, you could be getting tracked, hacked, or even worse, having your personal information sold on the dark web and possibly ruining your summer vacation plans. But that is where today's sponsor, NordVPN, comes in. NordVPN is constantly working to protect you from online threats, censorship, surveillance, you name it. Right now, you can get an exclusive NordVPN deal plus 4 extra months at nordvpn.com/snarkyj. And did I mention it's totally risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee? I'm already knee-deep in convention season prep, and that means that I am actively surfing a lot of different websites and inputting a lot of information. Well, I don't have to worry because I've got NordVPN's threat protection guarding my every click. Threat Protection Pro checks every download for malware. It blocks malicious links and phishing websites, and it even blocks pop-up ads. No more web trackers looking at what I'm doing and selling my information. With NordVPN, I've got my privacy back. With 24/7 customer support and protection on up to 10 different devices, NordVPN is all the protection you need to scroll safely while you hide inside from the sun. So take advantage of the exclusive NordVPN deal plus 4 months extra at nordvpn.com/snarkyj. Try it right now, totally risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Alright, so let's get into it. The live-action reimagining of Lilo and Stitch, which I feel like calling these things reimaginings is an oxymoron because there's nothing imaginative about them, but let's just get into it. See, the wonderful thing about the original Lilo and Stitch is that back in 2002, Disney had already been experimenting with 3D films. Pixar had already put out movies like Bug's Life and Toy Story, which had been huge successes, and so Disney very easily could have gone with a 3D animated route, and yet they still took that classic animation route, and it worked. The characters are soft, they're expressive, and the entire classic animation is also set against these beautiful, dreamy watercolor backgrounds that really had not been used in any Disney films since the 40s. But the point is that using traditional animation was very much a choice way back then. And it worked for a film like this, because you have these two sisters that can quarrel in a very childish way because they're both cartoons. We have this little blue alien that can commit atrocities and somehow still be cute enough for you to want to bring home for your kids because he's a cartoon. These aliens that are kind of bumbling idiots, they work because they're cartoons. They don't work in live action. Why are we still doing this? Look, I'm sorry, but Lilo and Stitch is one of those movies that needs that fantasy element for it to work. All right, I loved Stitch growing up. And then as I got older and had possessions that I cared about, and I realized if a pet made a mess in the house, I was the one that was gonna have to clean it. As I've gotten older, I realized that if that malevolent blue prick came anywhere near my home, my collectibles, or my family, I would pick him up and punt him across the expressway. I love animals. Every animal in my house is an asshole because I spoil the shit out of animals. But that thing is foul. He works because he's a cartoon, and if you watch it through the lens of childish whimsy, you'll love it. I'm beyond that point. I'm a little too old for it. The live action one doesn't work because this thing is literally committing atrocities in live action that are not as cute as they were when it was a cartoon. Maybe that's just me though. And the transition from animation to live action hit two characters worse than anybody else in this film. The scientist Jumba, and my favorite character in the entire movie, Pleakley, my star, the sun, the moon, and the stars to me. I love Pleakley. If Pleakley has 100 fans, I'm his biggest fan. If Pleakley has one fan, it's me. If Pleakley has no fans, it's because I'm dead. And stylistically turning the iconic Pleakley and his buddy Jumba into live action people sucks, because then they didn't want to spend the money on keeping these two as aliens. In the animated version, we're expected to suspend disbelief enough because it's a cartoon. So Jumba, this multi-eyed alien, could put on sunglasses and a mustache and a hat, and we were expected to believe he was passing for human. Same with Pleakley, who put on a dress and a wig and quite frankly looked very cute. We bought it and assumed that they could go to a restaurant and order off a menu and nobody questioned anything. Why? Say it with me! Because it was a cartoon and it worked. And what did they do? They made these two slimy looking horrific aliens, and then they were like, well, that's not gonna work in live action, and also, how much money are we gonna spend CGIing these things through the whole thing? No. We'll make them humans, and we'll cast Zach Galifianakis to be Jumba. Get rid of his funny, weird accent entirely. Get rid of his entire personality. We'll cast Zach Galifianakis to basically play himself. And then we'll get Billy Magnuson to be Pleakley. And let me tell you something, okay? I love Pleakley, but I love Billy Magnuson, okay? I think he is the cutest thing since sliced bread, which is not a real saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I have such a crush on Billy Magnuson. The problem is that it's not as funny. It's literally not as cute. Watching two grown men do these dumb things compared to two funny aliens wearing wigs and disguises. And look, I'm gonna keep working myself up over this whole thing. So let me just talk to you about the characters and the plot, okay? So Jumba, if Jumba was a real person, like if I were Jumba and this was a biography made about me or a biopic that I happen to be included in, I would sue the out of Disney, because the Jumba in this movie is literally an entirely different character than the one we were introduced in 2002. In 2002, Jumba was like your evil scientist archetype, but he leans way more into being a scientist than being evil. He creates this thing with the capacity to destroy, but over time, as he starts watching Stitch grow to love Lilo and join their Ohana, he develops this curiosity about this character, right? And eventually he ends up being the guy to help Stitch rescue Lilo at the end of the movie. He has a real arc. There's character development for an alien scientist that they could have made very one note. But in 2002, they decided to give this character way more complexity than was even necessary, and it made for a really interesting spin on that evil scientist archetype. And what did they do in 2025? They got rid of all the writers with talent, and they said, no, Hey, what if he was just evil? We'll get rid of his accent, we'll make him really stereotypically bad, and at the end of the movie, after all he's seen from Stitch, all he's gonna want to do is revert him back to being evil, and he's gonna re-experiment on him again. It's gonna be great. Pleakley, who was your stereotypical clumsy, anxious nerd, really just leans into almost being a sycophantic idiot in this one. He is over the top, he's overexcitable, and to me it kind of up the dynamic between Jumba and Pleakley entirely. And I also want to point out that they made Jumba pretty much the main villain to avoid having to animate Captain Gantu, which was basically the main antagonist of the original film, a captain of the Galactic Federation. He was kind of violent, he was kind of an asshole, and he is the main guy leading the charge to find Stitch at the end of the movie. He is your big bad. They obviously didn't want to spend the money having to animate this buff orca looking guy, which personally I would have liked to see how they accomplished that one. But anyway, they didn't do it, and so not having him as the villain tonally shifts the entire movie all the way into the garbage bin for me. And then, of course, it's a domino effect, right? So Cobra Bubbles, who was our secret agent slash social worker, who actually becomes an incredibly sympathetic character and helps Lilo and Nani at the end. We now have some random lady as the social worker. Cobra Bubbles is one note and irrelevant and tied to the CIA. We have this random elderly neighbor lady who was not a character in the original film. And another change that I really didn't like was what they did with David. David is Nani's love interest in the original film, but he's also just a really nice guy. He's a friend to both Lilo and Nani, and there's also this great scene where after they have that really bad day where Stitch destroys everything on the beach, he takes them surfing, and it's this really heartwarming moment where we see a guy that, yes, has a romantic interest in this woman, but he also just really likes them as a family and wants to do something nice. And David is written off almost entirely in this movie. The only times we really see him doing anything, he's just being a bumbling idiot and people are almost laughing at him. It's less nervous and endearing and more just, wow, dumb, because that's what they do with every friendly male character these days. With this film, Disney literally paints a picture that they don't understand anything about the original film at any turn. I mean, they even went so far that classic scene of the fat white tourist sunburnt, dropping his ice cream at every turn. It's a classic thing. Lilo loves photographing tourists because it's how she looks at the world, and we look at the world through her childish eyes. And so the whole point is this tourist kind of represents all of us on the island of Hawaii, out of place, sunburnt, and just trying to enjoy a vacation. And what did they make instead? The guy's not holding an ice cream anymore, he's holding a snow cone, and it also happens to be like a native of Hawaii. It's not as funny, it doesn't have the same effect as the fat sunburnt tourist. It wasn't a whitewashed character who needed to be fixed, he was a representation of the tourism on Hawaii. But look, the main issue here is not the tourist, it's not Cobra Bubbles, it's not Pleakley. The problem is the film misunderstands entirely the point of the one from 2002. And it doesn't know Stitch's place in the story, and it doesn't get what the film was telling you about Lilo and Nani. The original film is uniquely brilliant in the fact that Stitch feels like an interruption. Yes, Stitch was designed in that so ugly it's cute way that they knew he was gonna sell a lot of toys in the same way that Star Wars used the Ewoks back in the day. But the whole point of Stitch is that he is an interruption to the greater story. The real story here is Lilo and Nani, two sisters that are in the wake of their parents' untimely deaths. They are trying to stay together. You have Nani, the older sister, who's now having to play the parent, and she's probably had to put her life on hold, and she's trying to fix things. She's trying to make ends meet. And then we have Lilo, this child who's been made to understand this incredibly unfortunate set of circumstances that she's been handed. She is trying to be a good younger sister, but she doesn't look at the world the same way everybody else does. And we see these two spend this entire film fighting tooth and nail to stay together. And the involvement of Stitch is basically the straw that should break the camel's back. Even though Lilo loves him, he's destructive, he up a lot of the things that are already going wrong for them. And so when you look at the original film, these dreamy watercolors colors of Hawaii in the background, these beautiful scenery. And then you get Stitch, this chaotic thing that breaks up the slow-paced lives of these two girls. And so the story moves at a slower pace, but is interrupted constantly by the moments of chaos caused by Stitch. And the problem with the remake is that the remake exists to show you Stitch. They're interested in selling you more toys and recapitalizing on a character that to me is already vastly overrated and oversaturates the market on Disney-related merchandise. They are trying to sell you this thing at every turn, so the film is basically told to you almost from his perspective. Everything is overly chaotic, moves way too fast for its own good. And so where the original gives you Stitch as the cymbal crash in the middle of the symphony of these two girls' lives, this one expects you to basically ride this constant high with him the whole time, and unfortunately it doesn't work the same way, especially when they misunderstand the fundamental story the original was trying to tell. The original, again, is about sisterly love, about familial bonds, these two people sticking together through everything. These two need each other, and that's the important thing, and that's the message of the original. It's sticking to family, sticking to the people you love. And in this one, from the very beginning, we already see that Lilo is being treated like an impediment in the way of Nani's happiness. Nani wants to go to college. She's already resentful of Lilo, and that's very, very clear from the beginning. It's clear in the writing, it's clear in the performance, and it doesn't work. I felt like that from the very beginning, and I thought maybe I went into this kind of predisposed not to like it, and I thought I was being unfair, but there's one scene that sold me on that entire train of thought the minute I saw it. If you're unfamiliar with the original, there's a scene after Nani gets fired from her job at this luau, and when Lilo asks her about it,
"Did you lose your job because of Stitch and me?" "Nah, the manager's a vampire, and he wanted me to join his Legion of the Undead." "I knew it."
And it's obviously this moment where Nani doesn't want to have to explain to Lilo the really difficult situation that they're in, and anytime she has to, we see that it really strains her to have to put her sister through all of this stuff that neither of them asked to be in. That same scene plays out in the remake. Nani gets fired, and when Lilo goes to ask about it, Nani cuts her off immediately, says she doesn't want to talk about it, and then she bitches about them having to clean the house. There's no sisterly moment. There's no moment where we can tell that Nani's trying to spare Lilo from the thoughts of this uncomfortable and unfortunate reality that they've been put into. There's none of that. That sisterly love is essentially gone. So instead of this older sister clawing tooth and nail to hold on to her younger sister, the only family that she has left, after she nearly drowns on the beach, they end up in a hospital talking about bills, and she basically decides then and there to relinquish her little sister to the state so she can go off to college. And look, I'm not about to go into some speech or rant about roles and child rearing and all that shit, because I don't have children. I did have the luxury of going to college, and I've been focused on my career ever since, so I'm probably not one to talk. But at the end of the day, this is fantasy. And Disney could have chosen to give us a real retelling in a live-action format of the original story. These two sisters wanting to stay together, and at the end they make the decision to stay together and get better for each other. They're gonna work together and form a family. And instead, we get this sister that from the beginning is already dreaming of something else. And I get it, we should encourage people to follow their dreams, to pursue an education, to go out and achieve the things they want to achieve. That's a great message. But it didn't have to be combined with a movie where that's not the f***ing message. The message of the original is not go off, follow your dreams, f*** your family if they can't go with you, screw them, you gotta go do your thing. That's not the message of the original. The original is hold on to your ohana. Nobody gets left behind or forgotten. Cling to each other. There's strength there. There's love between you. Hold on to each other. This movie abandons that message entirely for no f***ing reason, because they could have just written something true to the original. That's such a cold, modern audience sellout thing, and I also don't know that it makes much sense narratively for a 6-year-old to have that perspective. I've been 6 years old. I was 6 years old almost 20 years ago now, which is devastating, but 19 years ago, when I was 6, I probably would not have encouraged anybody to go off and follow their dreams. When either parent had a work trip, I'd start crying because I didn't want them to leave. Because I was 6. I did not have the strength of character to be like, no, you go off, follow your dreams, and come back with a paycheck so we can eat. No, I wanted mom or dad there with me. I wanted to watch SpongeBob and play dolls. I was not interested in anybody going out and achieving. So I think this was a total sellout thing for Disney to have Lilo basically tell her, no, leave me. I'll be good with the neighbors. You go off. It's fucking stupid. This was honestly such a terrible movie. There was nothing in this film that hit like the original did and still does. I still can watch the original Lilo and Stitch and find things to laugh about and think it's cute and admire it and enjoy it. It's a film that I've always really liked, and to be honest, this modern day reimagining feels very much like an empty shell of the one it wants to be. Yes, there are some moments that are shot for shot true to the original, but the moments that they choose to shift away from that are so big and do so much to with the narrative of the original. It is so weak in so many other moments. It doesn't look the same. This entire movie, to me, is just a testament to the fact that these live action remakes should not exist. Unfortunately, they will exist because they make a load of money, but my god, do they get my blood boiling. I think I'm just gonna stop watching them because holy I mean, granted, I didn't have to pay for this one. But wow, I still feel like I need a refund on my time, at least. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I'll add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know your thoughts on the live action Lilo and Stitch in the comments below.